So I'll talk about a little bit of stuff in the business towards the end. So today, week 3, talking about reflection and celebration. So here's how this particular one came about. I have been doing a lot of talking, clearly, but it didn't seem to be that much more talking to me, quite frankly, because I've always had, you have to do speeches, you have to do trainings, you have to do all this kind of stuff. So it wasn't like I was necessarily talking more than I had. But I started noticing that when I was talking or doing the show or doing my podcast or having individual sessions with people, my throat would start hurting, which was really unusual for me. And I thought, ooh, is something wrong with my tonsils? Like, what's happening? And so a person that I interviewed a while ago, Miriam, you can see her on my podcast, the very first interview. And we talked about the fact that her company is Performance Communication. And she is a award-winning and classically trained pianist and singer, opera singer. And she comes at communication from a performance perspective. So helping people whose first language is not English, through accents, through people who are very technical and have a hard time relating to other people or conveying information for people who aren't as technical as them. So all of those kind of aspects. And so I reached out to her again and I thought, at some point I want to do singing lessons and all that. I've always wanted to do that, voice lessons. Well, I reached back out to her again and I said, you know what? I think here's what's happening. I'm having this pain. I think this would be pretty awesome to do a podcast. So the podcast that's going to drop tomorrow, those of you who follow me saw this little teaser on my social media. It's a long one. It's about an hour. But we are going to Miriam is actually taking me through the process that she goes through with people when she is doing some voice training with them. Not necessarily singing voice training, but just training with them so that they use their voice better. And some of it is about breathing. Some of it is truly about mental and spiritual grounding so that you are really grounded before you start talking to somebody, so that you're not carrying all your tension and your stress and your anxiety right in your throat. So I encourage you to listen to the podcast if you're like driving and all that kind of stuff, because the audio, we tried to do a really good job of describing what we were doing. I don't know that we were good 100%, but we really tried to be very descriptive so that if you were listening, you could still get it. But even once you listen, and please listen, because I'm still trying to get to 5,000 downloads by the end of the year. So I got 3 more weeks, 5,000 downloads of the podcast. I'll talk about that at the end too. But I also encourage you to look at the video. So the video will also go up on Wednesday. All this drops tomorrow. And we had a good time. It's funny. It's interesting. It's also a little bit embarrassing for me, but I did anyway, because, it is what it is, guys. I show up who I am and you get me. So it is a very interesting process. And actually even that one set of exercises and the things that I've been doing since then have helped tremendously. So like right now, I'm not really having as much pain as I've been having before. So I encourage you to listen to that. But anyway, long story. So doing all of that and reflecting and understanding really brought me to the reflection and celebration for this week, which is about, it is one thing to be reflective and be self-aware. But if you do that and you just sit on it, what's the point? The point is to be reflective, to be self-aware, and then do something. Because if you're choosing to do something, choosing not to do something, you are choosing to sit in paralysis and not progress. And that is a choice, but my argument would be, I know we would much rather move forward than to sit in that pain. And that doesn't mean that sometimes we don't have to sit in pain. Sometimes we need to sit and understand and contemplate and just feel what we're feeling. And then there comes a point in time when it's time to move through that. So I really thought about that deeply for today, because the other thing I've been hearing a lot of, especially as we got through the electoral college last night, as we've been talking about this whole vaccine and what's happening with that, what's going on with the pandemic, whether or not masks work, whether they don't work, examining and reflecting on what we've been able to do and how resilient we've been able to be, that we've actually been able to be, how strong we've been able to be, how many voices we've now heard that we hadn't heard in a long time. And even through the loss, how we've been able to come through that loss through this year. I really want us to talk about the fact that we are each responsible for taking that information that we get, one, for getting the information, and then taking that information and doing something with it. So if you are in pain, if you're feeling something strange, if something doesn't feel right, if you are confused about something, it is important that you move to figure out what that is and then do something about it. Because otherwise you're just still sitting in that same spot. And what's the point? What's the point of spending the time in stillness and in quiet and in self-awareness if you're not going to do anything with that information that you gather? Because then all you're doing is getting more and more trash in your head, right? You're staying in that area of contemplation, but if you never move to action, that stuff still stays. All that trash still stays and you never get to move forward. So let's think first about this whole vaccine thing. And Jerry and I have talked about that before. And this is not a political discussion. This is Laurel's perspective on the vaccine. And my perspective in general on information gathering and opinion forming and action taking. So I think we're all aware that if we reflect on what all has occurred and we reflect on the history of illness and disease and inoculations and vaccines, and you have the whole let's get vaccine, you have the whole anti-vaxxer thing and all that craziness. But I heard something this morning, and we've been hearing this a lot, especially in communities of color and in particular Black communities, about doing your research, making sure you get information before you make a decision about this vaccine. So we know our communities are affected heavily by COVID. We know our communities are affected very heavily just in general in the healthcare system because of quality of care, access to care, some of the things that happen in medical school that do not inform as well and as deeply around the disease states that impact communities of color, and some potential differences in genetic makeup and physical makeup. Not the crazy stuff that says that, our skin is thicker so we don't feel as much pain, not that kind of madness. But just some things that we know, like sickle cell tends to affect our community more heavily, et cetera, things like that. So when you think about the vaccine and getting research and getting all this back to self-help and reflection, what is it that is keeping us from participating in something that could potentially make a huge difference in moving us out of this madness? Well, one, there's history, and those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. There's history. There's the Tuskegee experiments, among others, where Black men in particular were intentionally injected, right? And then with syphilis, and then not told that penicillin would actually work and not given penicillin, all that stuff. I encourage you to go read that if you don't know anything about it. But here's what's happened since then. When you look at the way that vaccine trials happen and double-blind studies, even those researchers don't necessarily know who's getting what, right? Because everything gets numbers and all of that kind of thing. And then the numbers are used to reveal research, and hopefully they are connecting demographic data when they get those, right? Age, gender, race, all that kind of stuff. They're collecting all the data so that once they get the information, then they can extrapolate that to, oh, here's how it impacts this community or how it potentially impacts this community. But here's the piece around self-awareness that I had to recognize as well. One, I personally have a needle phobia. So that supersedes everything. I hate needles. It is embarrassing. It is embarrassing. I've actually almost canceled a surgery the day of, in the gown, in the bed, because they were about to get another needle or something. And I was like, I can't do this today, right? So serious needle phobia. Can't explain it. That's why it's called a phobia. So that's the first thing for me. But beyond that, it is that decision around our reflection and our research to understand why we feel the way we feel, and if there is an opportunity or option or a way to either move our perspective or our opinion, or to find a way to push through it. So when I look at everything that's been happening, one, I get concerned because the research happened so fast. Because since everything else takes so long, if I compare the development of this particular vaccine to everything else that's happened, it is so short, it's like exponentially short compared to everything else. Then my mind, because I tend to question everything, my mind starts to say either one, it doesn't take that long in the first place and we've all just been fooled and it costs more money because they're doing research for longer. Or two, it really does take that long and they cut corners to do this, right? Those are the two extremes that my brain goes to. And it's probably somewhere in the middle, because it probably does not necessarily take as long depending on what you're trying to address. And if we were able to do this so long for this virus, how come we haven't been able to already vaccinate against cancer and all kinds of things, right? Yeah. I'm just saying. So that's the first piece. But the second piece that I think about in research is, it's not so much that the research has demonstrated that this is effective against this particular virus. That's great. But the length of time that you need to understand outcomes and impacts and potential side effects and all that kind of stuff has not been long enough for my sense of complete, being okayness, right? There's just not been enough time. And the other piece of that is there was so much that was said in the very beginning about a lack of diversity in the people who were participating in the trials. And the reality is there are chemicals and makeups of vaccines that impact different populations differently. And so if there wasn't a diverse group of people that were in these trials, how do we know that it's not going to significantly impact one group negatively? We don't know that. So the timing, not only of the development, Leela was saying it took 11 months for this one, and before that, the fastest was 4 years. That's a big change. So not only do we not know, there weren't enough people that participated, we don't know what the potential long-term effects are. We just don't know. It hasn't been around long enough. And here's the thing about that in terms of moving to action, right? So you have to go back and with these things that are impacting our decisions, whether or not to participate in taking this vaccine. On the one hand, we know it is something that could slow the spread, if nothing else, right? And can get us an opportunity to get back to just interacting somewhat normally. We know that. However, there's other research that could probably be done that could help give a little bit more comfort before you make the ultimate decision as to why or why not you're going to take this vaccine. And this is where it kind of tags into even what we're seeing with the election. You've got all of the fringes. You got all the folks on the side who are saying you don't need to be putting anything in your body that's a foreign chemical, because if you're just eating right, your immune system will take care of itself. Well, I don't know anybody who eats right that well all the time. Nobody. Nobody gets enough of all the good stuff. Nobody. Even the people who tout that they do all the time, nobody. Okay? And then you got people on the other side, they're like, no, everything that comes out, we got to be first in line. So you got the fringes. But here's the thing about managing that pendulum swing. Everyone, while we have a general similarity in how we're made up, we never know how our bodies are going to respond. And so it is important as you do research to go back and look. For example, there are a significant number of African American people and women who have actually been involved in the development of the vaccine. So there are some of us in the process. So especially for the Black community, where we've had Tuskegee, we've had a number of other things where we have truly been experimented upon. There are people of and from our community who have been involved in development. That's a good thing. That is a thing that at least helps to ensure that there was some level of sensitivity around the differences in the community. Second, there is a real need for us to get real information. It's just like about masks. Masks don't help, you gotta wear a mask. Masks absolutely don't help, you gotta wear a mask. I mean, it depends on the minute of the day. But if you take away everybody's voice, so stop listening to people and go read some research done by people, but research done by scientists who are more interested in the information than they are in the personal perspective, go read it and then make up your mind. The thing that has happened to us I've done a lot of self-reflecting over this last 2020. The thing that has been revealed to me is just how intellectually lazy as a race, human race, we've gotten. We are so much more ready to just have people tell us what to do and tell us what to think, because that doesn't take as much energy. And so especially when you're talking about something that you're going to put in or on your body, it is incumbent upon you to do your own research, because who knows your health better than you? It's just like when you go to a doctor, and some of this is generational, because I remember having conversations with my grandmother, and she'd go to the doctor, and I'm like, well, what'd they say? Well, here's what they said. Well, why do they want you to do that? Well, I don't know. He just said so. No, what? Right? And it was, well, he was a doctor, so the doctor must know best. Not every doctor knows best, y'all. I'm just saying. Ask questions. Ask questions. Okay? So when you are in this area of reflection and research and understanding and trying to decide what action to take, one, you need to be ready to take action, because we all have to take action, or you're just sitting in paralysis. But take the time to really go and find your own research. Find people who you trust. Find information you trust. Go to resources that are nonprofits. Don't go to research that is funded by the pharma companies. You can read that too. It's good to read, everything you can. But find many sources that are not supported by or funded by those whose best interest is to have you do the thing or to have you not do the thing. Yeah, you need to read that stuff because that's interesting to know. But you want to go to places, good morning, Monica, but you want to go to places that are theoretically unbiased. Places where you can get information that is developed out of the interest of delivering information, not out of the interest of forcing people or moving people necessarily to act, right? So whether it's researching masks, whether it's researching whether or not you're taking this vaccine, whether it's researching what's going on with the economy, we've got to start thinking about these things and doing much more research and paying more attention to what we're talking about. The other example I'll give you, and we're hearing this a lot in Georgia right now. I heard it again this morning. What's being thrown out by the Republican side is these words like socialist, fascist, communist, all of these kind of things. Now, here's the deal. Here's the deal. The number of people in the United States, from a percentage perspective, who have actually been anywhere outside of the United States is pretty small compared to every other country. And the number who have actually lived in regimes that are communist or socialist is less than that. So we are throwing around these words and what it means for us and how it feels when we have zero practical experience. Stop it. Stop it. Now, that's not to say the folks that are living in Florida, the folks that are from Cuba, the folks that are from Vietnam, the folks that have lived in these regimes, who are making decisions because they have experienced it. Here's the problem with that. They're hearing all of us throw around those words, fascism, socialism, communism, and so that fear begins to rise up, and they're like, oh, we can't have that. We can't have that. Anything is better than that. Anything is better than that. So we have to be responsible for the words we use, for the research we do, for the things we say. We have to be responsible. And what we are seeing in this area of time is no one is taking responsibility nor holding themselves or anyone else accountable for the words they say and the messages they send. And that comes from the top. Oh, I didn't really say that. How many times do we hear, oh no, well, he didn't really say that. Yes, he did. Here's the proof. Well, that's not what he meant. Yes, he did. He said we did. Well, we took it out of context. Really? So 3 times we're going to negate what the person actually said that was documented. Mm-hmm. We have reached a period of time where even actual information is questioned because somebody just said so, because it's contrary to what they want to believe or what they want to hear. Mm-hmm. Stop it. Stop it. We are so far from socialism and fascism. And if you don't believe me, go look it up. I talked about that all the time on the radio show. Don't even believe me. It's called the Rutledge perspective for a reason. Now, I do my research. I read a lot because I don't like bringing stuff to y'all that's untrue. That's just not who I am. But don't believe me either, because there's always opinion. There's always perspective. And you need to have yours. And I'm so okay with that. And if you have one that's different, tell me. Let's talk about it. Send a comment and we'll just chit chat about it on the air. I do not get offended easily just because your opinion is different than mine. Now, if you're nasty, that's a different thing, because you don't have to be ugly to have a different opinion. So we're not going to be ugly, but we may have a different opinion. So when we're doing reflection and we're looking at what we can celebrate and what we can learn, because the whole thing about reflection is learning, because when you know better, you can do better. And remember, it's not only that learning which gives you knowledge, it's the action piece. That's the experience. Knowledge and experience equals wisdom. Knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. And so we have lost a lot of wisdom. We've lost a lot of wisdom. Every time, what do they say? Every time an elder dies, you lose a library? Because there's so much knowledge and information and experience in those brains and in those cells and in those hands, right? In those feet, in those feet, in those minds, right? That we lose. Every time we lose an elder, we lose a library. And so reflecting on 2020, as mad and crazy as it has been, there has been so much opportunity for learning. There have been so many people who have gained strength through this, who didn't even know it. Didn't even know it. There have been voices that we have heard that have been silent for a long time and decided not this year. Not this year. I'm not going to be silent anymore. And that's the kind of thing that gives me hope going into 2021. I'm like, y'all, I am ready to stick a fork in 2020 and move on. It is time for something different. Now, I also say that knowing that it's not going to just change, 1/1/2021, things don't, right? That's not what happens. But this year, enough already. Enough already, right? Charlie Pride, geez, enough already, okay? But it's important for us to, in this process of reflection, to understand that reflection is about learning so that we can take action, so that we can become more wise as we move forward. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. And the other point of that is when you become self-aware and you're reflecting, if you are in pain or something doesn't feel right, do something about that. Do something about that. My voice was hurting. It was unusual for me. My voice never hurts. It was highly unusual for me. So I could just stay in pain or try to figure out how to do something different on my own. Why? There are experts. There's a reason experts are out there. Even the best folks with the highest level of expertise find somebody who's an expert in something they don't know. It is not about weakness. It's actually about strength. You have so much confidence and humility to be able to humility to recognize you don't know everything. Confidence to know I can find somebody who does know it and I can learn. And that's what reflection and research and forward moving action is about. Not sitting in overwhelm, but doing something about it. If you are concerned and worried and afraid of this vaccine, go do some research. Figure out what you want to do. Although, I just got to be real. I saw them giving a shot to somebody this morning. That needle is so dang long. I don't know, y'all. I don't know, because my needle issue truly right now is superseding any other concern I have. And I get it. I got to get over it. I know, because, it's not normal. But still, it is what it is. At least I know me, and I know which issue I got to address, and I'm working on it. So, please make sure that as you are thinking about, I know I locked the back door. As you are thinking about what you need to do and where you need to go and how you need to do things, that it is critical that you give yourself the opportunity to be aware. To be aware and then take action. And go do some research and find some places that have people that know more than you do. That's why they call them experts. That's why they call them experts. It's really important for us to recognize that we don't know everything. We don't know everything. Right, Tisha, it's facts, not feelings. I tell people all the time, I get it, but it's not about emotion. It's not about emotion. This is business. People who are in HR who wanted to work with me, I just love people. See, you can't work in HR with me. Because if you lead with I love people, then it's going to be hard for you to get out of your emotions and make some tough decisions. And to see what's really going on versus how much you like the person or all of their circumstances that start to cloud the issue. And it's not that you're not compassionate. You can be compassionate, but there's a difference between compassion and emotion. Emotion makes us make decisions that are not necessarily reasonable. Compassion enables us to see things for what they are and to separate the person from the behavior. That's what compassion enables us to do. I can still have compassion for you. I can still care about you. And I can still make a really difficult decision because that's what's necessary. So reflect on what information you can get. Are you getting good information? Are you getting information that is broad? Are you getting information that gives you enough that you feel like you can make a decision or at least form an opinion? And then once you form your opinion, don't be afraid to have people continue to challenge your opinion because there's always new information that happens. There's always new information that happens. And the reality is you got to do you. At the end of the day, you have to do you. You are only responsible for you, but you are not free from the consequences of the decision you make, especially if that decision impacts other people. So when you talk about things like vaccines, you're looking at not only the pandemic, but if you look at the big diseases like smallpox or measles and that kind of thing. When you're talking about people who are anti-vaxxers, I get it. That's your prerogative. But I don't want your kid without a vaccine around mine when we know we already got rid of measles. Although measles is resurging too now, guys. That makes no sense to me. Polio, that makes no sense to me. Right? So we have to, at some level, the emotions are running so high. They're running so high right now. At some point, we have to pull back out of the emotion and just get reasonable again. And we've got to get real information. Just because people say something is true does not mean it's true. I don't know how many times we have to say and prove there was no fraud. Continuing to say fraud existed does not make it true. It doesn't make it true. So we have to be adult enough and reasonable enough and thoughtful enough and intellectually agile enough to say, even if I don't like it, at least I'm going to find the truth. Because here's the deal. This is what I think people forget. If you know the truth, even if you don't like the truth, knowing the truth actually gives you more information to form a stronger argument. You're still wrong because the truth is still the truth. Facts are facts. I heard that somebody say this the other day. I'm like, exactly, that's what I've been saying. Facts are facts. The facts exist. The facts are facts. What you do with them, how you form an opinion about them, that is something totally different. But your opinion about the facts doesn't change the facts. Your opinion about the truth doesn't change the truth. It changes how you react to it. It changes how you act upon it. It changes how you disseminate it, but doesn't change it. Because it just is. It just is. And we may not like it, but sometimes we got to get over it. Because it is what it is. So the fact is that we actually have several vaccines that are out that have been proven so far to have good effectiveness against this pandemic, this virus. Those are the facts as we know them. And I have to say, you know, the companies that have been developing them have probably been more forthcoming than ever in history with the data and the research because they know, one, people don't trust them. And two, it is incumbent upon everyone to trust them to get the vaccine so we can stop the pandemic, right? So the only, this is my cynical side, the only reason they're being as transparent as they're being is because they know people need to know. Because if people don't know, nobody's going to take the vaccine and we're still going to be where we are 2 years from now, right? So there is an impetus for them to be more transparent. It's not just out of the goodness of their hearts. Let's just be real. They are being much more transparent because they need us to believe them. So let's just put the truth out there. Let's put the facts out there. But we also know we don't have enough time, right? We haven't had as much time. Let me not say enough because that's an opinion. We have not had as much time as in the past to understand long-term impacts. Because we at some level, we do have to move faster if we're going to stop this thing in its tracks, right? And at least get it somewhat manageable. I think I heard it's Mississippi. Every single ICU bed in Mississippi is filled right now. In the state of Mississippi. Not a city or county. In the state of Mississippi, every ICU bed is full right now. So really thinking about what you are putting in your brain and who you are letting tell you how to think, where to go, what to do. You are in control of you. You are in control of you. And at that same level as you're doing that self-reflection, if you're finding things you want to do. I had somebody post, I follow this group, Girls Who Love Travel. And this one woman posted on there, she said, you know, through this pandemic, there was one point I studied French when I was young and I started studying, or I think she may have done it back the other way. She studied Spanish and then she started studying French, but nobody else, happened to be a black woman. Nobody else was studying French and people were giving her a hard time. So she felt bad and she stopped doing it. And now she's reached a point where she's like, why did I do that? So I'm going back and get my French. And I thought, you know what? And I posted for her. I said, you just kicked me in my butt because I studied French forever. started studying Spanish, finished my degree in Spain where I had to understand Spanish because 3 of my 4 classes were in Spanish. And I always wanted to be functionally fluent in Spanish and French. And then I want to be able to at least not get myself in trouble in Portuguese. And other stuff has just come up. Stuff has just been more important. And I kick myself all the time for having lost what I did learn because I didn't use it. And the only person keeping me from getting after that goal is me. Nobody else. There's nobody stopping me from doing voice lessons besides me. There's nobody stopping me from going out and doing whatever I want to do besides me. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to have a posse around you to do those things. You can decide the kind of things that you really love to do that make your soul sing, right? The things that make you happy, that help you give back, that help you serve bigger, that help you with mastery. Because I love languages, and I love when you travel being able to speak the local language. And it also helps you get into places that most people wouldn't be able to get into. You can go where the locals go because you can speak the language, which is always so much more fun. And no one is keeping me from doing that. And that ability to not feel bad because someone else says I shouldn't, that's also about wisdom and experience. Because just because they don't agree or don't understand, God didn't give that goal to them. He gave it to you, right? It's not their vision, it's your vision. And so you have the opportunity to go do the things that you really want to do. Now more than ever, we should understand life is short. Nothing is guaranteed. If you want to go figure out how to build a boat, go do that. You never know. You may become the best boat builder out there, and there you go, new business, right? There have been so many people who have started businesses during this pandemic because they saw a need, or maybe they lost their job, or their hours got cut, and they had time to pursue the thing that they've always loved, and now it became something that they could do and actually make money. Where some people see obstacles, others see opportunity. Where some people see obstacles, others see opportunity. And that's about reflection. When you are reflecting, what are you seeing? When you are studying and trying to become more self-aware, what are you seeing? I got this new book called Stay Woke. His name is Justin Michael Williams. And it's really, I thought it was just a regular book, but it's actually a meditation. I had to put it down after just reading the intro because it was so deep. Because it talked about when we're in this self-reflection process, how we can continue to talk ourselves out of stuff that we really want or we really believe because it's not normal, or because we've been trained to just go do what somebody else told us to do. Or, to his point, we do some of the things we're doing because we just want to be out of pain. His example was he grew up in a really, really poor part of California. He was in a really abusive household. He wanted to get out, go to college, make a good job so he could just get out. His thing was getting out of pain and trauma. And it wasn't until he did that and was sitting there and thinking, okay, well, yeah, I'm out of pain, but I'm not loving this. This isn't what I really want to do. This is what, is making me happy. And that's not to say sometimes, doing the job is just something that funds your real dream, because that happens too. There are many, many people who are working to live, not living to work. And those working to live people are some of the best, right? They are working because they have other things they want to do, and that work enables them to fund the stuff that's really important in their lives. And I admire people who do that. And so that reflection, in order to take reflection and move to action, you have to be willing to reflect deeply. You have to be willing to be honest with yourself. And you have to be willing to say, okay, I'm going to sit with this and sit with this emotion, but at some point I got to do something. Let me rephrase that, because we don't got to do anything. At some point, it is in our best interest to do something if we're not going to just sit in that paralysis. They call it analysis paralysis, right? Because you can be analyzing and moving and thinking and feeling and crying and screaming and for decades. And you look up and you're in the exact same place because you didn't take action. You didn't take action. Remember, information and experience, right? Knowledge and experience equals wisdom. Wisdom enables us to move through this world in a way that doesn't always keep us in that fight, flight, or freeze mode. One of the things he said, this whole thing is about a guided meditation. This book is guiding you through kind of meditations. And people say, And as I was reading it, I was like, yeah, that's right. Oh, I can't meditate. I don't have the patience to meditate. I can't meditate. And he's like, if you can worry, you can meditate.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, now that's a good point. It's all about perspective, right? Because I can worry. I am an Olympic gold medal worrier. I can worry with the best of them. I absolutely can. I can worry with the best of them. And his point was, if you can do that, you can meditate. If you can worry, you can meditate. So take that time that you're worrying about something and meditate on it, or pray about it, or what your practice is. Those gratitude journals, those gratitude practices, meditation practices. The whole point of those is to keep us in reflection, but then to move us to action, right? To move us through that, to understand those feelings and understand where we are so that we can manage those and deal with them and move forward. Because the whole idea is to keep moving forward. Even a baby step is still a baby step forward. Mm-hmm. You don't have to run a marathon every day. You might just be doing good to take a few steps, and that's okay. Sometimes you're doing good to just stay in the same place and not go backwards. That's good too. This whole month of reflection and celebration, sometimes we got to celebrate that we didn't backslide. That's a celebration. A celebration that we didn't go back to wallowing, or go back to an addiction that we had, or go back to, eating badly or not exercising or whatever our thing was. A celebration of being able to at least stay where we are. A celebration of when we move forward. A celebration of clarity. Those are my 3 words this year. Clarity, conviction, and compassion. Those are my 3 words. A celebration of getting clear on where we're moving and what we want and why. Because when we're clear about those things, then we can understand the information that's coming into our system, and we can use that information in a way that helps propel us forward, that builds wisdom, that gives us experience. So instead of us just tossing around fascism and socialism and communism and whatever other ism we can talk about, including racism, sexism, homophobia, instead of throwing around all that stuff, do we really know what we mean when we do it, or are we just trying to hurt somebody else? Are we just pretending? Are we deflecting? Why do we just throw stuff out there? Because words matter, and words once spoken can't be retracted. They're out there. So think about, when you're throwing a lot of this stuff around, who you're impacting. What kids are listening? Who are your employees that are listening? What culture are you creating? Here's another thing I had. Remember last week we talked about cult versus movement? And I said, we talk about cults, but really, in businesses they talk about cultures. And I compared, cults to cultures. It hit me at like 2:00 this morning. I'm like, the word cult is in the word culture. I wonder if that's on purpose. See, that's the kind of stuff that hits me with language nerds and all that kind of stuff. The word cult is in culture. And so what are we doing to contribute to the culture as opposed to supporting and building a cult? Although if I was in a cult, I'd want a cult of enlightenment. A cult of learning and reading and exploring. That's the kind of cult I want to be in. A cult where you question everything.
Yeah.
That's the kind of cult I want to be in, right? Not a cult where I have to leave my brain at the door. And more importantly, where I must leave my brain at the door. Because I'm somehow punished or ostracized or something because I might have an opinion. That's a problem for me, because I got an opinion on almost everything, whether or not I say it. Right? So,
you know what, when you're talking about a cult, I'm thinking about, I told you before we came on the air, I said, are you checking your Facebook? Because I'm noticing on my Facebook timeline, there are a lot of new friends that I have not accepted, but they're on my timeline now as friends.
Right.
And they've been saying a bunch of conspiracy theories and all of this stuff, and people are buying it. Say, oh yeah, that is true. I saw it on YouTube. I saw it here. Then they talk about having these echo chambers where that's all people are listening to, and they're just repeating what's being echoed in their head. It's hard for a strong leader type person. When you said if you had a cult, you would want to ask why. I would want to lead it because I'm like, you ain't gonna tell me that. So we're not gonna make it like that. Right. So when you think of gangs and people joining gangs because they're looking for a family, why do you think people would join echo chambers or cults of that nature?
So again, Rutledge perspective, right? This is my opinion. And I know there are actually probably some behavioral reasons behind this. Actually, another behavioral reasons behind it. So one of those, I think, yes, it's family, but it's more about safety, right? Because we respond differently. Actually, there is a physical response when we feel safe or when we feel unsafe. I just learned this last week. When you feel unsafe, there's actually a muscle in your inner ear that closes. So there's a physical response when you don't feel safe, and your eyes change. It physically change when you don't feel safe, because instead of listening to everything, you are listening for the threat. You're looking for the threat. And so it's that myopia, right? That myopic kind of, I'm just looking for that one singular thing. So I'm not seeing anything else. I'm looking for the threat so I can respond. So I think part of what drives cults is safety. The other piece is they tend to play on weaknesses, right? Those who have a tendency not to have as strong an opinion, or those who have a tendency to follow, big followers. If you look at people who tend to be in culture in some of these communities with these belief systems that are very interesting, it is a culture of oppression, and a culture of the only person who has an opinion, the only person that's right is the leader. Everyone else is wrong, and you just have to follow blindly. So there's a piece of it that's a safety piece. It's just safer for me to just let everybody else take it, right? Just tell me what to do. That's safer than me putting myself out there. And I think the other piece is, as I said before, there is so much information out there. Now more than ever, we have access to so much information. But it is hard to look at all that information, read all that information, understand all that information, digest it, and then make a decision to act upon it. That's a lot of work. And when you have generations of people who have not been taught to think critically, they've just been fed information and told just believe it because I said so, we have lost a lot of the ability and the capability to think critically and to read and to discern and disseminate and understand. We just lost it, right? Not that we can't get it back. I think we can, but we have to decide it's important. And so for me, I think what builds, and even in organizations, because we talk about that a lot here, about businesses and leadership, a lot of that is also about safety of the leader. If I ensure that nobody has a different opinion, or that at least can express it, then I'm good with moving forward with what I want. Not having other opinions, not having other perspectives, not having any of that gives me the opportunity to do exactly what I want, when I want it, how I want it. And I don't have to worry about somebody telling me it's wrong. I don't have to worry about thinking differently. I don't have to worry about being challenged, because nobody's going to do that. And so there's a level of safety and power and control in that. It's a lot about power, just from my perspective.
Oh, but that could be so draining when you're looking for some help. Because I thought about the president. When you think about it, and all you've had is people who agreed with you're wrong, when you really have a problem, who do you ask? Who do you ask?
One of the questions I asked that's out on my social media is, are you surrounded by yes people? Are you surrounded by yes people? If you're surrounded by yes people, I suggest you look at changing your team, or changing the way you engage with people so that they don't feel like they have to be yes people. Because that's really about, if you got a whole bunch of yes people around you, that's about you as a leader. That's not about them. That's about the culture, the cult you've created. I'm just saying. If it's all about you, if
now,
all they say is yes.
Let me say this real quick. When you said that, it made me think about President-elect Biden, who's picking his cabinet, and there's a lot of people who are angry. He should have got this person. He should have got this person. And he's basically picking from who he's worked with before, who he knows how to do the job, who he knows will do the job without a lot of back talk. Is that considered yes people, or is that somebody you're picking because you have history of working together?
I think for him, at least when I look at the people that he's picked, and I look back, because again, this also goes back to research and getting information. I've gone back and looked at, for those who had kind of public positions, I've gone back and looked at what they've said, what they've done, all that kind of stuff. One, he has picked people who have experience, that is for sure. Of their own volition. They individually have deep experience. Two, most of the people he has experience directly working with. But three, as I've looked at many of them, the ones that I have seen, at least in the research that I've done, are not yes people, because I've seen many times where they have dissented. They have dissented. So these are not people who have a problem saying, I don't agree. Now, I understand that, many that are more progressive are concerned because they're like, this was an opportunity to get new blood, new fresh blood. I can't disagree with that. You're right. Every time you have a position that's open, it's an opportunity to get somebody new and different. And we have just seen what 4 years of inexperience looks like. So my gut tells me, and I don't know this for sure because I don't have Biden on speed dial. My gut tells me that part of this is he probably has 2 years to get a lot of stuff done. He needs to surround himself with people who can get stuff done.
I was just going to say, because sometimes you need a real doctor. You can't get the intern.
You can't get the intern.
Yeah, we're too messed up to get interns.
He's got a lot of work to do to turn some things around or to move some things forward. And not everything, and I know people are going to say, yeah, everything's broken. I don't believe that everything is broken. The thing is, the stuff that's broken is very public.
Yeah.
But there is stuff that still works because even one person can take down the whole system, right? So there is stuff that's still working that I may or may not agree with, but there is stuff that's in place that is still functioning. But there's so much that needs to be repaired, including just the very fabric of how we talk to each other needs to be repaired. Our democracy has been challenged and the very fabric has been ripped, right? When you are still saying that an election was stolen, that you're still saying we're going to challenge even the absentee ballots now in one county in Georgia and how they signed the ballot. I mean, it's insane. And that people are believing it. I had a Sora post send us a note yesterday about someone who posted on her site talking about how this is crazy. This is just awful. He has absolutely been, he was chosen by God. And if you look at every prophet around the world, they all believe that he is the one that was chosen and Biden is not the one that and I thought, ooh, wow.
But you can't say this. When you said that, there are so many people, because I am a prophet of God,
Yeah.
there are so many people who are saying that, and the prophets are saying that. He was chosen in 2016. And he was chosen because he showed us how bad off we really were. Now time's up. Saul is dead. Quit mourning for Saul. God is sending a new king. So that's what they're not getting. They're still stuck. Because even if you're chosen, you can be chosen, but you still got to be obedient.
And not only that, we all have free will.
Yeah.
We have free will. The voice of the people is spoken. Keep it moving.
Keep it moving.
Keep it moving. And be very careful about worshiping idols. Because that's what I'm hearing in a lot of
That's
this.
it.
Just like they say, those who, are worshiping money, that's what happens, right? So anytime the thing that we as business owners, if the thing that we're running after is money, if that's all we're running after is money, that impacts your business. Because remember, not all money is good money. If the thing you're running after is the person, that's why I talk about cultures versus cult. If the thing you're running after is that person, if the thing you're admiring, if the thing you are hanging your whole hat on is the person, that's a problem. Be careful whose wagon you hitch your horse to. Because not every wagon is going where you need to go. And if you hitch your horse to that wagon, you may not be able to unhitch it before it's heading off the cliff. Right? And it's kind of like when we decide, or we get caught up in the rapture, so to speak, right? We get caught up in all the shiny objects and, ooh, squirrel, right? And I'm one of those people, what's new, what's great, what's shiny, and because we don't always think critically, and when we're in pain, if we are in pain, we will go to the person who says they're going to stop the pain. And there were enough people who were in a certain kind of pain that heard an elimination of pain with this person in 2016, that they drank the Kool-Aid and they believed it. And because the other piece of that was, and because you're in this pain, if you pick this other person, the pain is going to continue and it's going to get worse, right? They believe that. They believe the rhetoric. And there's always truth on all sides. The truth is always somewhere in the middle, because every lie has a little bit of truth in it. That's what makes it a good lie. Every lie has a little bit of truth in it, right? So we just have to get more discerning, people.
Yeah.
We just can't believe everything that's told to us. You can't believe everything you read. You can't believe everything you see. You have to do the research. You have to look at a bunch of stuff. You have to compare. You have to understand who wrote it in the first place. Do your research. We are not sheep. We are not sheep. People like to treat us like we are, and we allow them to do so, but we are not. And I think that's what we're seeing. What we have seen is that people who never spoke up before are saying, yeah, this isn't who we are. This is what I believe. This person doesn't speak for me. And we are not monolithic, right? Candace Owens doesn't speak for me. She doesn't even know who I am, so she doesn't care. She doesn't speak for me. But she does speak for some, even in the Black community, right? We cannot take one person and say they speak for everybody of whatever that is.
Wait, when you go back to, and then we got to go. When you said about the vaccine, and I thought about Dr. Fauci got on the news the other day, and he said, to let all you know, the vaccine has been created by a Black person.
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna be honest, that didn't move me because
right?
Candace Owens is Black. You know, she don't speak for me. I could care less. That's cute. I'm glad.
Right.
But I believe that people think just because we're gonna give you something that looks like what you like, this is what's going to make you make your decision.
Right.
And you just said we're not sheep. You have to have your own hearing and understanding and do your own research.
Right.
And not just take something somebody wants to give you.
You can't. And I'm glad he said that because I think his point was, no. There is a voice for this community that has been underserved and actually mistreated in the development of the vaccine. I think that's what he tried to say. But by just saying, oh, by the way, somebody Black was involved, that's not going to fix that, right? I said that earlier. That's great. It's nice to know that there was probably a voice for this community that hasn't been involved. But one person does not, make that big a change necessarily.
As an HR person, and let's say this world was a big company, what do you see needs to be done?
Ooh, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, communication is key. In my mind, there's a lot of rhetoric. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed in just the way we're communicating.
Yeah.
What information we're getting out there and who is communicating it. And holding people accountable for communication that is false. We do that in corporations. We hold people accountable when they're saying stuff that's not true. I don't know why that stops in government.
Maybe I have to research that because there's nothing that can be done with all this false information, with all these different news sources.
I think I don't think that nothing's absolute. Can something be done? There absolutely can be, but I think there has to be such a groundswell of stop it. That's what the problem is. I don't think there's enough people who are saying, there are more people who are saying just tell the truth, right? And you're seeing more news organizations that are like, no, facts. Like there's a CNN anchor who wore a sweater that said facts first. I need one of those, right? So, I mean, it happens, but there has to be such a groundswell. It has to be more painful to lie than it is to tell the truth. And until we get there. All right, y'all. Another Tuesday. Love spending this time with you. I hope you got something out of it. Reflect, continue to reflect, but don't sit in reflection. Move to action. Join me. I'll tell you about my other stuff next week because I forgot to do it today. So I'll tell you about my other stuff next week. Start looking for some group things that are coming your way. Love you guys so much. Thank you for joining. We'll see you next week.